Hello and welcome everyone to the InetSoft's Style Intelligence Release 2023 new release webinar. We're excited to talk about the new release's features with you today. My name is Ben Williams. I work in marketing here at InetSoft, and with me here is Katie Rousset, who's a systems engineer. So I'm going to be giving a brief introduction to the new release, and then Katie is going to be demoing some of the features that I mentioned, as well as going over some other ones. And then after that, we will have a question and answer period. So if you have any questions, please enter those into the Zoom webinar question panel at any time. We have some chart updates. For shape charts, the end users can now upload custom shapes for their own shape charts instead of relying on an administrator. For candle charts, we have a change to the default settings that are more in line with common usage. For pie charts, we now have an option for more precise control over pie chart sizing, which is great for dashboards with multiple pie charts. Line charts now offer greater control over how time series are displayed for greater clarity. Charts and crosstabs now offer a compound growth calculation. Regarding worksheet updates, worksheets now feature a quick menu for showing or hiding columns in the data worksheet. For reports, we now have text KPIs in reports. You can bind your text component in a report to actual data, referencing data models, mashups, worksheets, and queries for overall greater report design flexibility. We now offer single iframe chart embedding. You can embed a single chart in an iframe instead of the entire dashboard. So this is great for lightweight integration. Just briefly mentioning a few more things. Database drivers are now packaged as plugins. We have a bookmark history report, and default chart tooltips now show the total for stacked charts instead of just for the individual charts. I'm going to switch over to Katie, and she's going to demonstrate some of these features. Once again, if you have any questions, just enter those into Zoom webinar at any time.
We're going to get started with covering features from a design perspective within the Visual Composer. Getting started with some of these chart design enhancements just for ease of design, for greater flexibility of design. As mentioned, the point charts, when you're working with them, in the past, an administrator could upload a custom point, but now a user can select to upload their own stylized image, so that way they can select it for their point chart. The key thing about the shape list is that the custom ones will be to the rightmost panel. Again, you could always have these with the administrative help, but now we're going to have the flexibility to do it just as a designer of dashboards, which is really great. When you're working with candle charts, and any chart in general, in the past you would always have your metric, unless you had a custom default aggregation type set in a data model. It would default to sum or count depending on the column type that you were working with. Now we will automatically match, when you're doing candle binding, the high point will take your max of your metric. The close point will take the last of your metric. The open point will take the first of your metric, and the low point will take the min of your metric. So it's just going to default to what is the most logical, most often selected option, so that way you don't have to go about changing it for every single metric when you're building a candle chart. Love to have design time shortened. For many that are working with pie charts, we've had some various requests around controlling the diameter of the pie chart. In this particular example of side-by-side pie charts, you can see that because I have more labels, longer labels, the pie chart is being sized differently, even though the actual charts themselves happen to be the same width and the same height. Now, when you perform a right-click properties, you can, under the Advanced tab, when you are specifically working with pie chart, can set the pie ratio. So it's from 0.1 to 1, so that's the key thing that you want to put it in there in the right notation. You can experiment for your data, for the area size that you give in your chart, to determine what is going to be the best pie ratio if you wanted to ensure that more than one pie chart have the same diameter. So again, you would want to make sure that your pie charts themselves are the same size, so that way the ratio within that would make the diameters the same. This will impact your show values and show labels. So we will change the orientation of the labels and potentially reduce the number of labels that we feel that there's enough space for in this circumstance. So it's a trade-off, but visually you're going to get that nice, clean matching of the size of the pie chart. With line charts with trends over time, when you're working with maybe a certain granularity such as day, and you don't have a point of data for every single date within your data set, you always have the options to fill time series gaps, drop it to 0, or to not have it continually connect all of the points and actually have the gaps and spaces. But now we have an option that when we are filling that time series, we can fill the missing data specifically, instead of with null, with a dashed line. So that way it will connect it as a continuous time series as it had in the past, but for the points that represent value to value, as in the next axis point in your series having an actual value, it would give you that solid style. But when there is a set of gaps, it will connect them with the dashed line. So it's going to be able to convey for your trends over time where you have continuous data and where you have it filling and jumping that gap. That's a really great option. We've been highlighting a lot of these new features around charts. So even though compound growth is supported for charts as well as crosstabs, we're going to take a look at compound growth within a crosstab. So my particular crosstab here, I've already set out a compound growth. I have a couple of dimensions, so years, the quarter, broken down by a region along the top here. The key thing when you're working with your metrics is first you have to have your starting value that you want to work with. So you would drag out your starting metric, and then you would select to edit measure. For your aggregation, is your compound growth for your sales or for your interest percentage or for a discount percentage, what is it going to be based off of? Are you looking to base it off of an overall sum or maybe an overall average of, say, like a discount percentage? So you would make that selection first. Before selecting for trend comparison, custom option, where when you set edit, the custom option will allow you to select compound growth. When you're dealing with time series, running total has been the most popular so far, but there have been requests to support the compound growth as well. So this compound growth, when you're working with it within a crosstab, you actually would set what you want to break the compound growth down by, because you can have multiple levels of summary within your crosstab. So because I have year broken down by quarter, but maybe I also want to have some dynamic binding in there where I'm going to break it down by month, work with hierarchy, I can choose inner dimension versus explicitly the quarter of my date binding that I have. And just like with the running total, you're going to have the options to set whether or not it does a reset in its function. So it's going to provide you a lot of the same flexibility you have with the running total, but instead to apply it for a compound growth. Before we take a look at things more from the user portal's perspective, we're going to go ahead and jump right over to our worksheet area. There have been a couple of different enhancements within the worksheet area, but one of the ones that I'm most excited for is for managing many columns at once. For those that are dealing with larger mashups, that are dealing with REST APIs that return a lot of columns, you might find that you need to hide a lot of columns, and maybe that you then decide, oh, I really shouldn't have hit that column, and then you're constantly scrolling left and right to do so. Instead, now you can just pull up a quick Show Hide Columns dialog box, rapidly change the visibility of any of these columns, even bulk, show all, hide all, to kind of clear out and make your minimal selection, so you're not necessarily selecting 20 columns or 30 columns when you're dealing with those wider data sets that have quite a few columns to them. So it's great to have this quick dialog, just like we have had for sorting and for changing the column orders. We now have also for the show hide visibility columns. For those that have worked with our unpivot option that we've had within our worksheets for forever, you might have found that if you ever introduced additional dimensions that you wanted to have included in the row headers that you're keeping, that in the past you would need to actually do an unpivot step again. You would need to change your level of headers appropriately, and then you would get your replacement data block. Once you had your replacement data block, if you happen to have it flowing through to other joined situations, mashup situations, you would have to remap to the updated data block. There were a lot of steps, and then sometimes you would cause problems with your data. We wanted to simplify that. We wanted to remove that issue. And so now when you have an unpivot situation, you can just select under the actions and edit your pivot level and make the adjustments to the level of row headers you have for ease of adjusting your design. Also, in some cases, because of long-running queries and what we're reading from the data set and the sampling that we do, when we do the unpivot and we have our dimension and our measure, sometimes your measure field is not automatically categorized for the continuous that, oh, they were all actually integer, or oh, they were all doubles, or at least a mixture of numbers. Maybe it thinks that there was some string content in there and it's defaulting it to string, and making it difficult for you to then use this measures field in charts and summary situations. So if you happen to have that mismatch when you do the unpivot, you can now easily do a right-click column type and actually explicitly adjust the column type to appropriately match what the data is, so that way you can ensure that we are applying the formatting and the automatic behavior of treating it as a measure versus a dimension when you're then, say, designing a dashboard going forward off of this data set. So some really nice enhancements around the worksheet unpivot feature. There have been quite a few customers that leverage scheduling. They leverage just manually exporting as a user when consuming a dashboard. And in some cases, you might actually use this concept of a tabbed UI, and you might have some additional detailed tables that you include in your dashboard, but you're not always visually showing them, that you would want to include when exporting, in particular when taking advantage of the options that Excel might support. So we've enhanced the Excel export, and this would double again also for scheduling Excel exports, not just manually exporting here, that you can have it export all of your tabbed tables in here into separate Excel workbook tabs. So it's going to go into your one file. Also, when you've been doing your exporting, you've always been selecting, am I looking at my current view? Am I just having it export a particular bookmarks perspective of this dashboard? You will have the option to actually select more than one bookmark and have it be included within this Excel export as well as additional workbook tabs. So it's going to give a lot of flexibility, though watch your size. You don't want to have your Excel export become too large, but it's going to provide greater flexibility to not necessarily have to have as many separate exports that you can get all in one file, which is really nice. A nice little note about the bookmarks, as mentioned, that there are going to be quite a few features that we're not necessarily demoing today. Bookmarks, we've added some administrative controls around bookmarks. You can do an enterprise manager for managing your bookmarks, reviewing the bookmarks that exist on your assets, and also if you have auditing enabled, the bookmarks and about, which assets have bookmarks, how many bookmarks there are, when they were created, who created them, will all also be captured in an audit report as well. So this way you can get a view of your environment and make some changes and adjustments to enhance the health of your InetSoft deployment. Ad hoc reporting has gotten a nice little feature added to it. You've always been able to, with the ad hoc reporting, work with the charts and the tables and the crosstabs, and had static text so you can have your nice titles and your labels, but we did not support to have the text components bound to data. So that is something that has been added. So when you have a new text component, you do a right-click properties on it, and instead of in the general tab changing the static text content, you would jump to the new data tab. Just like with all components, when you're working with like ad hoc reporting, you can select your data model or your query or the output of your worksheet mashup. And you can then set the appropriate aggregation that you want to have in place, and it will then be reflected in that text component. Of course, you still have the flexibility to stylize that text component, set the alignment, set where it is within your ad hoc report, but it's going to give you a little bit more flexibility and bring a little bit more of some of the features supported from Syle Studio's perspective when you did that advanced report design as a full developer in that desktop tool. You can now do this text component binding to data that you always could do in Syle. Really great little feature. And before we highlight the next big feature, I just wanted to mention a few things that are going to be worth mentioning. There are enhancements within data model auto drilling, the user portals, virtual private models. We've brought a feature in that was always supported in Studio, that there's been some enhancements to some of our default script function library and options for creation parameters for scheduled tasks that you really should review. All of the feature list that's on the release notes when you're looking to do the upgrades, so that way you can really get a feel for all the features that are available. A big thing for this next feature is that it actually was not fully flushed out in the release candidates. It's currently up on the website. You will need to wait until the GA is posted within the next couple of weeks to fully use this feature. This feature is a lightweight embedding of a chart from within a dashboard. So instead of embedding the entire dashboard, whether it was an entire dashboard that just included only a chart component, you would always still, from what is loading in the iframe, be loading up the entire infrastructure to support running a full dashboard, whether or not there were certain visual components in it or not. So now this is a lightweight embedding just specifically where you call a chart from within a specific dashboard, and it will only load the necessary components to support that chart. So the embedding is more lightweight, and it allows you to have the flexibility of multiple framed references. In this case, I have 4 separate charts from 4 separate dashboards, and I'm able to have them on this flexible page and potentially have other content around this page, and it will reduce the overall load of the loading of these charts within this page. So when you're looking to do lightweight embedding to complement your full dashboard integration within your websites and web applications, you can also have key charts from those dashboards picked and embedded in a more of a lightweight manner in certain aspects of your UI or your web pages that you want to showcase. So it's a really nice feature. The key thing is that it's only for chart components. So it's not for gauges or for like cross tabs. It's only for charts. And the great thing is that you can have a full dashboard that you want to pick a chart from. It does not have to be that you're explicitly designing separate independent charts. You really can just display charts from your existing dashboard. One more thing about your deployments, and if you're at all looking at version 2023, I would encourage you to review the information about how we're now packaging the database drivers as plugins for those that are used to working with your JDBC drivers and have run into conflicts because you're working with various databases and the plugin versions have conflicting classes. By having us bundle them now as plugins, we're going to alleviate that pain point for those clients, but you just want to keep in mind for managing your system that you're going to want to review the release notes and the upgrade notes, as that will look a little different for you within Enterprise Manager for managing those and for the process for uploading additional JDBC drivers in the future. I'm going to turn things back over to Ben for going over questions with all of you.
All right. Thank you, Katie. We have a question here. How does version 13.7 relate to the InetSoft 2023 release?
Version 13.7 is more of a build designation tag. So I believe some of the stuff that was currently published might have had some of the tags, the existing tags for the 13.7, but the official version name is 20. That is version name that you will see when you're looking at, what version and build number I'm running when you say open that page with an Enterprise Manager or you're launching your Syle Studio, you'll see.
All right. The next question is, for the new chart embedding option, could multiple charts be embedded on the same page? If so, will that allow us to load them at the same time instead of consecutively?
So you would be able to call more than one frame with independent charts directly linked in them. This would cause simultaneous execution of the charts from those particular dashboards that you are linking with, however, your particular web page and how your iframes are handling that loading. But they will be completely independent from each other. They are not a comprehensive dashboard in that circumstance. They're not going to have any of the relationships for options like brushing or having filter components and so on, but it would just give the chart contents themselves in more of a side-by-side or in two different sections of the page. When that page is loading, those iframes would call up those assets simultaneously.
Another question we have is, if I'm not already on the most recent version of Syle Intelligence, can I skip directly to this upgrade? I think they're asking, or do they have to go do the older upgrades first and then this one?
Yes, so like with all releases in the past, you should have no problem just jumping direct from the version that you're running to version 2023. Since all of the release notes in terms of feature lists and notes about from like an infrastructure, architectural changes perspective are noted in each individual upgrade instructions, I would recommend reviewing each of the separate release notes for the versions in between. But you do not actually have to do the upgrade steps and go through the process of upgrading to all the in-between versions. You should have no problem jumping to version 2023. If you find that you have any concerns around the upgrade process or any hesitation with embracing performing an upgrade, please feel free to reach out to your account manager, and they can see about getting you additional reference material or potentially aligning you with a support engineer to see what we can do to ensure that you have upgrade success.
Okay, some more questions. Do the iframe charts work on a website with cloud hosting?
Yes, so you should have no problem from an architectural perspective doing the embedding, whether or not you're doing cloud hosting or on-premise. It should behave just as embedding an entire dashboard would, except for the fact that it is just an isolated chart. It's designed to just load what is required for the chart, but that's really the only true difference that you're going to have with that type of embedding.
Regarding the line chart feature that was demoed, is there an equivalent option for area charts?
So that line chart option to have it interpolate with the dashed line, that option is supported for line charts, radar charts, and point type charts that have the show lines option enabled, but it is not supported for the area style chart.
Okay, we do have a few more questions, but I'm afraid we're out of time. For the people who still have questions pending, we will reach out to you with answers via email. We will actually also be sending out an email to everyone who registered with some additional material, including a video of this presentation. But as always, if you have any further questions other than what was asked here, you can contact your account manager if you want to learn more. Thank you, Katie, and thank you everyone for attending InetSoft's Style Intelligence 2023 new release webinar. Have a great day.